what is the application, what is the result, the communication aspect. Like it's just, I think data science today is really a modern, it's a modern business practice, right? I mean, it has been adopted a lot in different organizations, some more than others because some are more mature, and large orgs typically are much more mature in that sense, and they have specialized teams. In smaller organizations, you sort of have to do a little bit of everything because there's only a little bit of you. Nonetheless, if you think about the competencies, right? Because it's not really about skills, it's about competencies. And there's a good framework in one of the
What does that mean? What's the difference between a skill and a competency?
my sense, or at least I think the best way I can define it is, I think a competency is a competency is a combination of skills to be able to perform a specific task, right? Because sometimes like a simple task, you might just need one skill, right? But a lot of the tasks that we do, especially in the modern workplace, right? They're complex. It's not just a simple like thing. It's a combination of skills, and I think competencies are not. I wouldn't say they're mutually exclusive because there's obviously overlap between competencies, and I think skills, and there's not a one-to-one mapping of skills to competencies because a competency can be made up of two. Many competencies can still use similar skills as part of the framing process. But there is this chart, and in one of the works that we looked at, that Cuadrado, Gallego, and Domenico. So one thing I did want to comment, though, is interestingly, I did find that there has been a lot of academic research in the last couple of years, not necessarily in the U.S., which surprised me. There has been formal academic research in trying to define data science as a profession, as a as a profession, as a field, and I also try to establish a roadmap, right? A sort of an academic roadmap of skills and competencies. That's where I sort of got all of this stuff. And interestingly, all of these new works reference our work. So that's how I got here. And I was surprised to see this because I've been thinking a lot about this recently, and I was surprised to see this, and I was really pleasantly surprised to find that the ideas are similar. Like when I read this, it's like, this makes sense. I've sort of been thinking about this too. Obviously, I never published it or did any formal research, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So your summary point there is that you did this research, or you created this publication a dozen years ago, and you're pleasantly surprised, that so much subsequent research since has been citing that work, and the work that has been coming out since is largely aligned. The academic research is largely aligned with the thinking that you have been doing about what defines a data science career and what makes an effective data scientist.
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it. Thank you for summarizing.
That is my job. Okay, so Mark, let's get to how we can be effective. So let's talk about this a la carte menu.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, you can describe it. There's
the mental. I think a good way to think about skills and competencies today for a data practitioner, because let's take data scientists out of the equation. Let's make it more about a data practitioner, because data practitioners it's broader, but that's by intention because there's different functional areas. However, when you look at sort of the models, right? There's the skills model, there's a competency model. There's like 2 or 3 different models that have been proposed by different folks. I try to take those ideas and compile them into a framework. And what I came up with is this idea that you've got, from a skills perspective, or let's call it skills and competencies perspective, there's sort of 3 major areas. There's a baseline data. There's what I call like a baseline set of data skills, which are made up of probably 4 broad areas. The one is kind of like what I call late data literacy, right? Is understand, like being able to work with data, right? You don't have to be a data scientist, but you need to be able to work with data. And I think everyone today needs to be data literate. Like in the modern world, we all need to be data literate. So it's about, being able to understand information presented, numerical information presented. I'm not talking about creating statistical models or anything, like just like understanding the data, how it got analyzed, whether it makes sense, that sort of thing. Second is data wrangling, right? You can't do machine learning, you can't do data visualization, you can't do just simple data analysis without data wrangling. That's just like a given. It's unsexy, yet we all know it makes up a lot of our work. But you need to know how to work with different tools to extract data, right? Whether it's databases, cloud, structured, unstructured data, text files, wherever the data is. Obviously, it's mostly digital these days, and if it's not digital, like, oh boy, that's a whole other story. But it's that. Then there's the computational skills, right? I mean, look, folks, we use a computer. We need to know how to use a computer, like more, beyond using a browser and just like applications. You got to use the terminal. You got to use the command line. You got to know how to make the computer do what you want it to do. I cannot stress that enough, right? And I still see this in students coming into the programs. They come in. I mean, yes, they've never programmed before, and that's fine. But you have to know. You have to effectively use your computer, and your computer is going to talk to other computers, and you have to have computational skills. And then the last part is obviously like kind of your basic data analysis and visualization skills, right? And I'll talk about communication separately. So those are like what I call baseline data skills. And
Gotcha.
regardless,
Yeah. So I'll recap those. So the baseline data skills that you defined in this a la carte menu for effective data science are data literacy, data wrangling, computational skills, and data visualization.
yes. And
Nice.
I'm saying here that it's much more than an a la carte menu, because it's not really a la carte. There's a lot of overlap here. Obviously, this is just one framework. Um, so it's not about just picking the boxes. It's about looking at the whole thing and focusing on the areas that make sense. But there's a lot of overlap, and it's very hard. And I said, it's the other thing, kind of going back to what I said before, is a lot, you see a lot of publications, people, whether they're blog posts or Medium posts, like, hey, I became a data scientist in 2 weeks. And, there's like a little roadmap. It's like, okay, start with the iris data set. Like, no, you're not using the iris data set anymore. I'm sorry. Or the penguins data set or the New York tax. Like, okay, fine. But like, that's an a la carte. It's like, you have to check the boxes. This goes a lot further. It's not about checking the boxes. It's about understanding how all of these elements really come together. I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, you're saying that we can't. There isn't a one size fits all shortcut to
No,
being the
no.
ultimate data scientist. The practicality is that there are lots of different facets. You will never in your whole life be a data scientist that can tick all the boxes of data science skills, because it's a fast moving field. As we went through, over the past decade, we've had all those different eras: the big data era, the data product era, deep learning, MLOps, cloud, responsible AI, generative AI. Each of those eras comes with a huge amount of different tools and approaches,
Yes.
many of which are highly technical and distinct. And so it is impossible to keep up and be like this ultimate unicorn data scientist. However, despite that, you are providing us with a candle in the darkness and confusion in the storm
I'm attempting
of
to.
all of these things, where, like you just said, there are baseline data skills that everyone needs,
Yes.
regardless of which kind of data scientist you want to specialize in becoming. And like we just said, those are data literacy, data wrangling, computational skills, and data visualization. So then what's next? So then the next thing is, I guess there are different data domains that we can choose to be, more expert. And like I said earlier, I think it's probably a good idea to, through things like podcasts or blog posts or whatever people like, to be kind of keeping abreast of what's going on in all the kind of adjacent domains. But to actually, develop experience and deep expertise, you could pick and choose different domains, one or two or three.
Yeah, and so kind of back to this mental model or framework that I'm talking about. Obviously, we're seeing it here, John and I, but you folks are listening it. So there are so one is the baseline data skills, and think of that as like one of the basic components. On the other side of this, there's another set of skills and competencies that are also basic, but they're non-technical, right? I would call like the baseline technical skills. Like what we're just talking about were the baseline data technical skills. Now I'm going to talk about what some people might call soft skills, or I really like the term that Kazi Kozyrkov uses, which is non-automatable skills. So it's the human side, and those are things like, your cognitive skills, the communication, interpersonal and intrapersonal, um, and ethics, like ethical skills, and then there's like a whole like decision intelligence aspect, which is being able to make decisions based on information, that sort of take all of these things. That's kind of an other, and so we've talked a little bit about the technical baseline skills. Let's talk a little, this is like let's call them the non-technical, or let's call them the human skills that you need. I also call them, like 21st century skills, and not me. I've seen this being quoted elsewhere as like 21st century skills, because any modern practitioner, like, business practitioner, any modern worker today needs to have these skills, pretty much regardless of whatever domain you're in, not just into tech, but like regardless of any other domain. So I think you have to have those skills. And then in the middle, there's more like of the specialization.
One sec, quickly before you get to the middle and the specialization, let me just recap those. So there's overall there are three broad categories of kinds of skills that people need to be an effective data scientist today. We've gone through two of them now, and those first two are all what you would describe as baseline skills. The first bucket are the baseline technical skills that we went over first. Those are, again, data literacy, data wrangling, computational skills, and data visualization. And then there's the baseline non-automatable skills per Cassie Kozyrkov, or what a lot of people call soft skills, which is I think we all know what we mean when we say soft skills. It's just kind of a funny thing because they are learnable skills just like anything else. So it's fun, but I think when we say soft skills versus hard skills, people know what that means, and so that includes things like interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills, ethics, decision intelligence, like you described. The one in there that I didn't understand at a glance is, what does it mean? Just what does cognitive skills mean?
So this is an attempt. Again, I tried to summarize some of these works that are quoted in my presentation, and it's just like, there is a set of competencies called cognitive competencies, and it's just like thinking about it. I wish I could give you a better definition, honestly,
It's kind of like, is it kind of general problem solving skills, that kind of idea?
probably, I think so. And then if you look, right, and then but then if you look at this sort of model, there's that, and then there's all these three. There's three arrows that are kind of coming from different directions, right? There's statistics, computational, and domain. And the domain, so we haven't gotten there yet, but yes, cognitive. I think just that simple word is attempting to quantify, like to qualify or describe, yes, problem solving skills, like how you think about problems, and how to get from a problem to a solution.